We have a poem by Erica Hunt called If Not for the Comma. It's really one of my favorite poems by Hunt. It is a meta poem. It's in praise of commas. When you think about it, commas help us subordinate our thoughts. They allow modifications, they allow pacing, they allow pauses, they allow ripenings of thought. They allow language to tumble. They allow a certain rhythm that unmodified and unsubordinated sentences don't permit. Without the comma, there would be no praise of tumble, she says. No advance, that is to say, progression of askew. Commas enable us to trip over our ideas. Commas make sentences and words and lines seem more rather than less like the way our mind works. It's really quite a remarkable thing for a poem to be imagining a world without commas. Would we be able to call out pause before you, and if not for commas, would there be periods after every word? One constipated thought, no ripening. It's really one. You could almost say that it's a meta poem. Commas create the kind of music that helps us endure, and that's really where I want to focus on the last stanza. I'm going to read the last stanza and then say a few things about it. If not for the attraction of cymbals to brass, think about associating cymbals and brass, those sounds, those sharp, soundy sounds that are created by those two instruments and the relation of the two. Think about that as analogous to what a comma does to a sentence. So cymbals and brass are to musical composition as commas are to writing. If not for the attraction of cymbals and brass, we would look into in other words, if not for the comma, we would look into silence and think we were making a sound. We could not have borne the first and permanent exile where words summoned our original dreams. What is that permanent exile? Is it Eden? Is it the expulsion from Eden because of knowledge? That is seemingly in the cosmology of many people on this planet, the invention of language that doesn't do the job, the invention of failure of meaning, right? Because an Edenic language is a language where every word fits to a thing, where communication works perfectly. And exile is the state you feel when you have to struggle to communicate what you want, or even just pointing to the world. Post-Eden. So there's that. But then there's this thought that the first and permanent exile, in particular for a black poet who cares about the history of black art, Erica Hunt, and its presence, I should say, we could not have borne, we could not have survived, we could not have tolerated the pain of first and permanent exile. So is that, in fact, the middle passage? Is that, in fact, the transport into slavery? We could not have borne the first and permanent exile where words summoned our original dreams, the things that one did not have, could not realize in language, had lost, which now repose beatless, breathless, trampled, abandoned prematurely, yet legible in the lines and specks. I mean, those specks are periods and commas, no? Jumps and unvoiced, black and slim and black and jaunty. So this sounds already with its conjunctions like a kind of poetry of music. Black and slim and black and jaunty and black and curvy, curvy. I think about language with commas as curvy. The advance of a skew, the tumbling of phrases separated by commas, that's curvy. So we have sound, we have jaunty, so we have dance, and coded in rhythm, sacred musics stacked in rubble. Rubble is what you get when you add a lot of commas to language. Commas create a black musical aesthetic, she seems to be saying. Stacked in rubble, residue, and root, vine, and verge, womb, texture, and of course at this point we're getting lots of commas. Rubble, residue, and root, comma, vine and verge, womb, comma, texture, and remembered array, as if never complete. That's that Edenic problem. Never complete, an incomplete space of where the insistent din meets now. Of course, the din is that noise, the noise that can only get organized by a poem into sound making sense. And that din, which is historical ever since the fall, or ever since the great sin of modern people, slavery, that is the never completion. And that insistent din, that sound meets today. This valorization, this appreciation of commas turns out to be a kind of history of the stumbling, askew, tumbling of language in exile.